We welcome you to another Sunday School lesson. Sunday School is a gift from God. In the previous lesson, we saw how Jacob bartered with Esau to gain his birthright. While Jacob's actions gave him access to the financial blessings reserved for the eldest, he did not automatically receive the spiritual and covenantal blessing. When parents play favorites with their children, the family becomes dysfunctional. It will be characterized with deception, division, and manipulation. This can be said of Isaac and Rebekah's family. God promised to channel his blessing through Jacob, the younger twin brother. Rebekah is aware of this. Consequently, she planned to ensure that Jacob, her favorite, would overshadow his older twin brother, Esau. Meanwhile, Isaac is aware of God's plan, but he preferred Esau, his firstborn. Apparently, this created a rift in the family. While Isaac attempted to alter God's plan by trying to bestow the blessing on Esau, Rebekah through manipulation and deception tried to help fulfill God's plan. Deceiving others is a way that people get what they want. Genesis 27 begins with a description of Isaac's physical condition. He has greatly aged, now probably about 137 years old. As a result, he could no longer see. However, Isaac's other sensory organs, including his appetite, hearing, feeling, and touch, remain intact. He knows that his death is at hand. Since he doesn't know when, he wants to perform his last patriarchal duties before he dies, bestowing of blessings on the firstborn. He therefore invites Esau to a private meeting. Our first verse says, "Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau." As Isaac makes his plan to bless Esau, Rebekah is eavesdropping. She purposefully paid attention with keen interest to the conversation. Rebekah must have intentionally watched out for the day Isaac would plan to bless his preferred son. As she listens, Rebekah overhears Isaac's plan to bless Esau. Verses 5b and 6 says, "When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, 'Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau.'" When Esau left to hunt game for his father, Rebekah calls Jacob's attention to Isaac and Esau's conversation. She reveals the details of Isaac's plot. Verse 7 says, "Bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die." Esau is a skilled hunter known for making sumptuous and tasty dishes from his games. Isaac asks him to go out to the field and hunt some game and make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, that my soul may bless thee before I die. Isaac is aware of God's plan that the younger son was to receive the covenant blessing, yet he intends to give the blessing to Esau. Moreover, he is aware that Esau had despised his birthright and sold it to Jacob, thereby relinquishing his rights. In addition, Isaac couldn't have forgotten that Esau had disqualified himself when he married Canaanite women. Verse 8 says, "Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you." Rebekah takes matters into her own hands to ensure her own favorite son receives that promised blessing. She decides to control Jacob and deceive her husband. Rebekah calls Jacob to listen and obey every instruction she is about to give him. Verse 9 says, "Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it." Rebekah outlines her plan, one so quick and detailed that we can assume she thought it through well in advance. She instructs Jacob to go to their family flock and choose 2 young goats. She volunteers to cook them for Jacob just the way Isaac likes them. Some people will do anything to accomplish whatever they devise in their hearts, even deceitful things. Having lived with her husband Isaac these many years, Rebekah knows quite well the type of food he craves. However, to pull off this scheme, turning goat meat to taste like venison, will take extraordinary skill. Verse 10 say, "Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies." This verse reiterates the purpose for the deception for Jacob to gain Isaac's blessing. For Rebekah, the end justifies the means. No matter how good our intentions, we should not attempt to accomplish them by doing what is wrong. God doesn't need our help to fulfill his plan. However, Rebekah proved to be as deceitful as her son, Jacob, whose name signifies deceive. Verses 11 to 17 detail the dialogue between Jacob and his mother. He objects and gives excuses why the plot could fail. His objections are not based on the moral dilemma, but rather on being caught and its consequences, a curse rather than blessing. Jacob is not concerned about his mother's immoral device to deceive his old and vulnerable father. Instead, he is concerned how it would affect him if the plot fails. Morality has disappeared in this family. While Jacob hesitates and questions his mother's plan, although for the wrong reason, Rebekah is determined to go on with it. She prepares the food and hands it over to Jacob to present to Isaac, his blind father. Verse 18 says, "He went to his father and said, 'My father.' 'Yes, my son,' he answered. 'Who is it?' As a grown man of 40 years, Jacob could have resisted and refused to connive with his mother's deception. But instead he conforms to it and takes the food to his unsuspecting father. Here begins a series of Jacob's lies in order to obtain what God has already promised him. Verse 19 says, "Jacob said to his father, 'I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing.'" The first falsehood is when he claims to be who he is not. It is tragic enough to lie, but to lie to someone you call my father is even worse. Still worse is when one takes advantage of another's disability. Nevertheless, Jacob uses the endearing phrase "my father" to evoke trust. Jacob's second series of falsehoods is when he lies about the food and the Lord. He claims to have complied with his father's wishes and calls the goat meat "my game." Jacob's absolute goal is the blessing. It doesn't matter what method he uses to achieve it or the lies he tells. Verse 21 says, "Then Isaac said to Jacob, 'Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not.'" The next series of lies Jacob tells has to do with his identity and his love for his father. Still suspicious and unwilling to rely on his heirs, Isaac asks Jacob to approach so he can feel if this is the right son. Remember that Esau was born with what was like a hairy garment all over. Mindful that this could have resulted in failure to their deceitful plot, Jacob gave this very objection to his mother Rebekah. However, to cover this loophole, Rebekah uses the skin of the young goats to cover Jacob's arms and the smooth part of his neck. The sense of touch is one of the faculties Isaac has not lost. Verse 22 says, "Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, 'The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau.'" Jacob approaches his father. After feeling Jacob's hands, Isaac says, "The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's." Tricked by Jacob, Isaac mistook the goat skin for human hair. He could not discern whether it was Jacob or Esau. Verse 23 says, "He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he proceeded to bless him." That is to say, Isaac was confused and uncertain as to who it was. Nonetheless, he decides to bless him, thinking that it was Esau. Verse 24 says, "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Isaac is still not fully convinced it is not Jacob he is about to bless. Therefore, to be certain the blessing goes to the rightful person in his mind, Isaac asks again if the son before him is really Esau. Jacob lies again and says he is. Verse 25 says, "Then he said, 'My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing.' Jacob brought it to him and he ate, and he brought some wine and he drank. Then Isaac asks him to bring the food closer so that he can eat and bless him. Jacob brings the food and Isaac eats. He also brings the wine to Isaac and he drinks." Verse 26 says, "Then his father Isaac said to him, 'Come here my son, and kiss me.' After eating and drinking, Isaac prepares to bless Jacob, supposing it is Esau. Isaac asks Jacob to come and kiss him as yet another test. Jacob commits another fraud and kisses his father. A kiss in every culture is a symbol of love. Jacob's kiss is hypocritical, a kiss of betrayal, the type Judas gave to Christ. Verse 27 says, "So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, 'Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed.'" As Jacob kisses his father, Isaac smells the odor of his garment. Rebekah had thought ahead and took care to provide for this particular test. She gave Jacob some of Esau's clothes to wear. The smell finally convinced him that it is Esau because it smells like the field, and so sets the stage for giving of the blessing. Verse 28 says, "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine." Thinking that it is really his son Esau, Isaac pours blessings on Jacob. As the spiritual head of the family, Isaac has the right to pass on blessing as related to the covenant of Abraham. Isaac blesses Jacob in two major areas of life: prosperity and authority. Firstly, Jacob will be blessed with natural and material wealth, comprising agricultural prosperity. The produce of the land and animals measured wealth in their culture. Isaac blesses Jacob with dew to water his crops, and with abundant grain and wine, the staple crop. Our last verse says, "May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you, be blessed." Secondly, Isaac adds political authority with reference to his own people and other nations. Other nations will bow before him, and his own brethren will bow and serve him. Here Isaac reaffirms God's prophecy regarding the two boys: "The sons in your womb will be rivals, and your older son will serve your younger son." By using the plural brethren, Isaac looks beyond Jacob and Esau's day to the future, when Abraham's seed would multiply. In addition to these blessings, Isaac also assures Jacob of the Lord's protection. Here he quotes the Lord's original promise of protection to Abraham. In spite of man's flaws and his attempt to falter or alter God's purposes, God's promises and plan will always prevail. It is not the bestowal of these words by Isaac upon Jacob that made him blessed. Rather, Jacob was blessed because God chose him, long before Isaac pronounced the blessing. Our key verse states he did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he proceeded to bless him. This verse shows that secrecy and manipulative plots works, sometimes. But it is best to operate within an environment of honesty and openness. This fosters mutual trust, especially in the church family, and this is prescribed by the Lord. Let us hold fast to these messages from Genesis 27. 1. You can't prevent the ultimate purpose of God. So why not work with Him, not against Him? It is futile to fight God. It may seem as if you're going to be able to get away with your plans sometimes. But God, not man, determines history. As people say, life is a lot more pleasant when you don't kick against a pointed stick. 2. Godly ends do not justify wrong means. Was it God's will to give the blessing to Jacob? Yes. Was it right for Rebekah and Jacob to gain the blessing through deception? No. Methods do matter. Wrong methods don't become right just because they work, even when they help accomplish God's purpose. Just because a marketing scheme brings people into the church does not make it right. God's work must be done in His way. 3. Never seek your brother's blessing. Coveting is one of the things the God hates. He provides what each of us need. Be content with what you have, for He said, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." Hebrews 23:5. 4. Almost always, there is a way not to sin. There's a fallacy of situational ethics. It poses a false dilemma, then tells you that you have no choice except to violate God's moral absolutes. There's often time pressure. We can imagine Rebekah thinking, if I don't act now, God's plan will be thwarted. I don't like lying, but I have no choice. But, almost always, there are other choices. I agree that, in a fallen world, there are some ethical dilemmas, but they are really rare. Thought to remember. The law of sowing and reaping applies to both crops and character. Isaac's family was planted with the weeds of mistrust. Isaac didn't trust Rebekah or Jacob, or he would have included them in the plan to give away his blessing. Rebekah didn't trust Isaac, or she wouldn't have gone to such elaborate lengths to deceive him. Jacob knew that his father wouldn't trust him, as shown in his comment to his mother, "Perhaps my father will feel me, then I shall be as a deceiver in his sight." Neither Jacob nor Esau trusted each other. It was a family filled with mistrust. To kill mistrust, each member must die to his own selfish way, and plant seeds of harmony and cooperation in God's way. Our lesson next week is entitled, Jacob's Dream. Our biblical reference is Genesis 28:10-22. We are truly glad you spent time to learn this week's lesson with us. We hope you are blessed and may share these with somebody else. We wish you can join us at the Cubao Church of Christ soon. Our congregation is a place to discover faith, find new friends, grow closer relationship with Christ and serve with each other's gifts. Thank you very much, have a great week, and God bless you always, dear brothers and sisters.